The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are simply that, opinions. All are presumed innocent until proven otherwise in a court of law. Sensitive topics are discussed. Discretion is advised.
Police in Arizona poured through hundreds of tips, including a possible ransom note, as the search continues for Savannah Guthrie's mom, Nancy. A UCLA gynecologist found guilty of sex abuse gets his conviction overturned because of what was discovered about one of the jurors. And in Los Angeles, weeks after designated survivor actor Kiefer Sutherland was arrested on allegations that he assaulted a rideshare driver, prosecutors are holding off on charging him formally. The court of law is done for the day. Let's get right to Court of Opinion. Welcome to Court of Opinion. I'm Jenaé. Thank you for joining us. And we begin in Arizona with a case that has everyone's attention. We are following those new developments in the search for Today's Show host Savannah Guthrie's missing mom, Nancy. Police believe that the 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie was abducted from her home in the middle of the night. And according to law enforcement, she was last seen inside of her home in Tucson, Arizona, Saturday night after family saw her around 9:45 in the evening. Now, this case is unlike many missing persons reports because within the first hours of that report, deputies quickly found, quote, suspicious circumstances, and they declared Nancy's home the scene of a crime publicly. Today, authorities there in Pima County, including the FBI, held their second press conference asking for the public's help. In case you missed it, here are the highlights.
Is she still in this area, or is there somewhere else?
We don't know where she is, so we're like any investigation. Just start from the point of where we last saw her, and we work out, and we're working as far out as we can go. We do believe that Nancy was taken from her home against her will. At 11 o'clock in the morning, the family got notice from somebody at church that she was not at church. They went to the home, found her to be missing. That's the timeline. From Saturday night, 9:45, we'll say, to Sunday morning, 11 o'clock.
When you reference violence at the site, can you elaborate on that? And also, was there a sign of forced entry, any valuables taken?
We're not getting into that. What I'd tell you is, like any crime scene, we processed this crime scene. We gathered all the evidence we could, everything you can imagine, and we gathered that out. Those things have been submitted forward to labs. We're like you. We're waiting for those returns to come back.
Sheriff, is there any indication so far as to whether this was a random abduction or targeted?
It's like I said earlier, you know, we're looking at all the leads, and we don't know. We're going to assume both sides of that.
Any idea what Nancy Guthrie was wearing, or any identifiable information that the public could use to help with those tips?
We do not.
Do you believe that one or more than one person was involved in the kidnapping?
I just no clue. We're following all leads we have. That's all I can tell you. I'm not saying there's blood inside that house or outside that house. What I'm saying is our team processed a scene like you would think of any crime scene. We go in and we process it. We have a lot of work in front of us, and we have someone's life who is in jeopardy. And so job number one is we got to find her, and we got to work hard to do that.
They are looking for someone that is still alive.
We hope we are. We hope we are.
Absolutely hope that she is found. This is a disturbing story. Let's get reaction from our power panel that is standing by. We have with us attorney and former litigator Lisa Bonner, criminal defense attorney and former federal prosecutor Michael Sterling, and we have trial lawyer Matthew Barhoma with us as well. Great to have you all on for this it's a chilling story when you think about the what ifs. Lisa Bonner, just hearing the details that have come in the last, we're reaching the 48-hour mark where she would have last been seen. Tell me what concerns you most.
It's so concerning because we have really no clues. I mean, the public does, so it's really hard for us to really form an opinion. But they said that she could not walk, that she does not have her medication. That is something that is very concerning. And now there's possibilities of maybe a ransom note and blood. And this, for me, hits very close to home. My mother is around the same age. I grew up in the summers in Arizona. And I, like Savannah, have a very close relationship with my mother. We've gone on vacation together. So I found myself getting very misty-eyed yesterday when I saw this, because this is a woman who is very vulnerable at that age. And apparently, you know, I did go on her Facebook page. There might have been a ransom note because she was protesting ICE. She seemed to have very liberal opinions. So this is very concerning for any woman or any person who is missing their mother. I mean, this is tragic.
Yeah, we're going to talk more about that ransom note potentially. Has not been confirmed, but Michael Sterling, want to get your opinion, especially with police now. They've done daily pressers, but they say they're not going to do one tomorrow unless there's new information. But this can be overwhelming. They seem to have a lot of specific information yesterday, and then today a lot of we're looking at everything.
Yeah, and I think that lets you know that the stakes changed, right? So when the sheriff's office says this isn't a search mission anymore, this is now a crime scene, they're saying the stakes have just changed. And now they're doing, as the sheriff pointed out, they're doing a clean sweep. They're looking at everything that they can possibly find, not only in the house, but on all of the land. And it seemed to be a vast amount of land there. And then you add to the fact, as Lisa just mentioned, the fact that she doesn't have her medication, right? When medication is missing, it's no longer just an abduction case, right? This is a life or death clock that's ticking because you don't have your necessary prescription medication to be able to properly take care of yourself. And so those are the things that are really most concerning to me, Julia.
Matthew, before I get your reaction to this, I do want to bring in some information that's just coming through to our Court TV newsroom, and it's via News Nation. So a reporter there, Brian Enton, he got these images of what appears to be blood drops on the front door of Nancy Guthrie's home. Now, today, of course, police saying they're not going to confirm that they found blood, but they did confirm that they had cleared this crime scene so people could go to the door, get as close as they wanted to. And we're seeing this, that he is captured there at that front door. You also see that there's a Ring camera missing. Matthew, that's something that was asked of the detective, of the sheriff today. Where is that Ring camera? Was it removed by a suspect? The sheriff would not confirm that, but what's your reaction to seeing this potential evidence in this case?
You know, it's chilling, I'll tell you that, okay? It's tough to see. If it is her blood, very, very chilling, and I mean, pretty conclusive evidence of maybe what transpired. I mean, it's all adding up. Now, the sheriff has done a good job at keeping some of this information silent, but if there was someone who actually did this, if this is a crime, which I think it's panning out to be, I would be very worried if I was that criminal, because they are good. They're going to find you. They're going to prosecute you. There's a plethora of evidence. They are telling you that they're looking at license plate readers. They're looking that they're telling you that they're triangulating cell phone data, right? And they're telling you that they're following up on these tips. And if there was surveillance footage, even worse, because they're not just looking at surveillance footage from the house. They're also looking at all the surveillance footage in the neighborhood, right? Something has got to give. And if it gives, you're going to be found, you're going to be prosecuted. And I don't think that that's going to be a great prosecution for you.
And you mentioned all those resources that they're using. Let's take a listen back to something that Sheriff Chris Nanos there in Tucson, he said, these are the things that we are employing to try and catch whoever did this and find Nancy Guthrie.
We expended a lot of resources for a missing person that we typically always do. Our search and rescue volunteers, our search and rescue teams, other agencies, Borstar from Border Patrol sent their canines out. They worked tirelessly all day yesterday.
Michael Sterling, let me get you to react to that. They're using, it seems like everything, the FBI is involved now. Where do you think they may be in the investigation now that we are getting close to 48 hours out?
Well, one of the things is it's good to see the state and federal authorities working together in a fashion that we had not seen recently. So to have the FBI coming in with their resources, their additional resources to help the county sheriff's office, to help the local police, the FBI has access to sophisticated data, have access to things that the sheriff's office may not have access to. So they have these number of resources that were just laid out by my colleagues. So that joint task force, that joint cooperation means that, you know, as they get closer to this 48-hour deadline, they're probably going to get closer to figuring out exactly where she is, what happened, and who was involved.
We absolutely hope so. Lisa, you mentioned this allegation that there's a ransom note. So we want to talk about the details. And this was actually received by, so far as we know, 2 two different outlets, one being TMZ. They reported that they received an alleged ransom note for Nancy Guthrie. They said that this note demanded payment for the release, in exchange rather, for the release of Nancy Guthrie. They said the note was sent to them this morning, Tuesday morning, and it demands a specific substantial amount of Bitcoin, and that amount is in the millions, and the note demands that cryptocurrency be sent to a specific address. And they say they verified, TMZ did, that Bitcoin address is real and that there was a deadline connected to this alleged ransom note. There's also a statement in that note that they reported was "or else" would happen. In addition, our Scripps News partners out in Tucson, so Scripps News Group in Tucson, also received a ransom note referencing Nancy Guthrie, making the specific demand for several $1 million in Bitcoin by Thursday, and threatens to kill her if that payment is not received by Monday. It also makes specific reference to two pieces of evidence at the crime scene, which we cannot authenticate as legitimate. Now, Scripps News has forwarded the full contents of this note to investigators and authorities. The same for TMZ. They say they've turned it all over to the Pima County Sheriff's Department. Now, the Sheriff's Department since then has responded. And they told Court TV that, quote, "We are aware of reports circulating about possible ransom notes regarding the investigation into Nancy Guthrie. We are also taking all tips and leads very seriously. Anything that comes in goes directly to our detectives who are coordinating with the FBI. We've been talking about that collaboration." But Lisa, your reaction to a ransom note, what potentially, we don't know if it's credible or not, but what does that tell you about a case like this?
It tells us that we are getting closer to having some information on who has done this. There is a digital footprint, right? And it is going to be identified, it's going to be verified. I cannot imagine that how Savannah and her family are feeling. It's very concerning. And what is this all about? Is this due to her political opinions? Is it due to just money? And why her in particular? It just raises all kinds of questions that we at this point can't even opine on, other than to really feel that this is something that is very tragic, that we are talking about, just closing in, and it's just leading more and more, in my opinion, to tracking down who is behind this. And it is my hope that they find the people that are responsible for this before this gets too much further down the rabbit hole. Absolutely. Especially she does not have her medication. Absolutely. It's just tragic.
So many questions still.
Yeah.
Michael Sterling, we don't know the credibility of this ransom note, but if true, this seems unusual to me. This seems like something you see in crime dramas where a note is released to a news station. Is that telling you anything? Have you ever been involved in a case or heard of one where there was a ransom note?
And not in this fashion, right? It does sort of read like a made-for-movie script, but unfortunately, these are real people involved, right? But no, I've never been involved in a case where you had a ransom note sent to a news organization like TMZ and separately to Scripps News. So you've got two separate notes. But what I do know is that detectives will look at those notes, figure out where they came from, look at the digital footprint, look at the Bitcoin address, because both of them ask for Bitcoin address, see if those addresses match, or if there's some tie between those addresses somehow with, some sort of similarities or something that they can tie to a specific individual or organization or something, right? So that's just more evidence. So what we do know is that regardless of if this ransom note is real or not, there's some more evidence being collected, and we know they're following all potential leads.
Matthew, we're going to have to go in just a minute, but I want to get your final thoughts on this.
Every incident like that, every maneuver like that, you get cocky, and like my colleagues here have said, that's traceable evidence. If it's authenticated, I think it adds a bit of an aggravating factor to this case, in the sense that you really did do it for ransom and you were looking to collect ransom, right? And I think that adds motive, and it doesn't look good for you.
Absolutely. We've been putting up that tip line. If you know anything or from that area and saw something, definitely reach out to the Pima County Sheriff's Office. We have to take a break, but coming up, we are turning our attention to the state of Utah. The man accused of assassinating political activist Charlie Kirk back in court for an evidentiary hearing, and the evidence that his defense wants to block, we are going to talk about coming up next.
The Court TV podcast will return.
In Utah today, an evidentiary hearing was held in the high-profile murder case of the death of political activist Charlie Kirk, who was shot while addressing a crowd on a Utah college campus. And the man who's accused of pulling the trigger, 22-year-old Tyler Robinson, was inside of the courtroom today, facing the possibility of the death penalty in this case. But before this case ever reaches a jury, there's been a legal battle that's been unfolding inside of the courtroom. It's initially over a conflict of interest. The defense wants to get the prosecution thrown off the case because they say one of the deputy attorneys had a daughter that was on the scene of all of this. So today, during that evidentiary hearing, the defense wanted to block not only the public, but also potentially in the future jurors from being allowed to see this video that's at the center of this case. And it is graphic video. The shooting itself, it's one that sparked outrage, of course, across the internet. It tried to be quickly pulled down because it showed these final moments of an activist's life while speaking to a crowd. And it's also drawing a debate about whether or not images like this should be shown to the public. Fairness, bias, and right to a public trial and access. So that footage, as I mentioned, it quickly circulated online. It had millions of views, and it appeared to show the moment that a bullet strikes the activist while he is speaking to that crowd. Blood is visible in it. He collapses in his chair. It is horrific. Defense attorneys argue that that video in court could potentially permanently taint the jury pool. Meaning, if it's shown in this hearing and the members of the media are inside of that hearing, then other jurors, potential jurors who are out there, may see it and they may be tainted. So they want the judge to block that footage from this hearing and limit the cameras inside of the courtroom. Now, prosecutors disagree. They say this video is critical evidence to help them show that that daughter that is part of this scene, that she won't have to be a critical witness because other people recorded what happened. So let's bring in our guest panel. That's a lot in this case, but it is a pivotal moment. So Lisa Bonner, Michael Sterling, and Matthew Bahoma with us. Michael, let me start with you. This is a sort of convoluted in the weeds when it comes to this conflict of interest and then this video. But we have the prosecution saying we have to show this video to show the court, hey, this one daughter who is connected to this case, that's connected to us, she doesn't have to be a critical witness here.
Right, yeah, and I think, you have to realize that the evidence is the evidence, right? You don't get to pick and choose your evidence. If the video is part of the crime, the jury, the judge, the public can't be asked to evaluate or look at the case with one eye closed. You don't get to pick and choose your evidence. The answer to viral evidence isn't necessarily a closed courtroom. Right? The answer to viral evidence is a careful jury selection and a judge who controls the process. And so by pointing out, look, Judge, this evidence is critical to our case, it removes the fact that we would have to call, any number of witnesses who were there. I believe that the prosecution has a right to show the video. You have to deal with that evidence. And if it were the other way around, defense attorneys who had some favorable evidence for them, they would be wanting to do everything they could to show that evidence to you, the public, Court TV, Scripps News, and anybody else who wanted to see it. And so, you just have to deal with the evidence as it comes. And here it's clear the evidence is the evidence.
As a member of the media, I can appreciate that opinion that we don't want to just close the courtrooms and kick the media out. Matthew, this video, do you think it would taint a jury pool? And do you think we're going to see that come up once we get closer to a trial here?
I got to respectfully disagree here with my colleague. And the reason is, listen, if I was a defense attorney in this case, I would not want that video shown, okay? Don't show that video on behalf of my client, please. And the reason is, we're not contesting that this was a shooting. We're not contesting. None of that is at issue. The only thing that we're contesting is whether or not this defendant here, beyond a reasonable doubt, did it, right? So I wouldn't really want it. Do I think it taints the jury? Maybe not in the way that the defense is trying to paint it out, okay? I think that it does taint the jury in the sense that, yeah, it's very graphic and maybe unnecessary. Sure, it is the best evidence, but again, it's not really at issue. So I think it just brings emotions into the jury that is maybe very volatile towards the defendant and, does very little to protect his interests. I think if we were to keep this out, I think that would be fair game.
Lisa Bonner, you're gonna have to split the tie here, and I see you nodding your head.
I happen to agree with Matthew. It is unnecessarily graphic. I saw the video, and it is horrific. It is unnecessarily graphic. It is down and dirty. And I understand that what Michael is saying in terms of the evidence is the evidence. I think this is ripe for appeal. If they allow this video into evidence, I think there are other videos that if they can show, that they can present, that are less graphic. It's just something that is unnecessary, in my opinion, to go down to nail down and drill down on this particular video. It is clear that the daughter was there, and to have her, they don't need to have this video in order to have her come and to excuse her from presenting her testimony. I think there's better ways to do it, and I think it's ripe for appeal.
See, for me, I don't think that transparency is prejudice, right? I'm always on the side of the more transparency in a courtroom, the better, because that is how the public trusts that justice isn't being done in the dark. By having open courtrooms, by having cameras be allowed in the courtrooms, that type of transparency is the best disinfectant. As the quote says, sunlight is the best disinfectant. So for me, it's not, and then even if you say it is prejudicial, the question doesn't become, is it prejudicial? It becomes, is it unfairly prejudicial? Is it so unfairly prejudicial that it denies the defendant the right to a fair trial? And I don't think it is in this case. I think you have to deal with the evidence that comes your way. I've dealt with cases where there was clear video evidence of my client doing things, and I had to deal with that evidence the best way I knew how.
I do believe it's unfairly prejudicial, and I think that there are other ways to present this evidence. And like I said, I do believe if you are to admit this, this is setting this up for, I mean, they're going to appeal either way, but we are not contesting the murder. And this is an aggravating circumstance, and it really can taint the jury, because you are putting this in prior to them seating a jury, and this is going to be widespread, right? And so everybody that is in this potential jury pool is going to see this video, and I think that even if you do a change of venue, it does nothing to advance the prosecution's case. There are many less invasive and horrific videos that you can, evidence that you can present that can get the job done.
Matthew, you were trying to jump in. What's your thought?
You know, I agree. And, I was going to ask Michael, what does it tend to prove, right? Because it doesn't bring the point closer that this defendant did it, right? All it brings the point, the only thing it proves is that the shooting happened and this is exactly what it looked like, right? And again, those things I don't think are contested. So, what does it really prove for this jury?
Well, I think that a carefully crafted prosecution, if you're clever and you know how you're doing your job and presenting your trial, you're going to be able to show what angle what angle the bullet came from. You're going to be able to show the trajectory of the bullet, how the bullet hit, the level of impact, that impact is actually what caused the death. I mean, you'll be able to show various things that tend to prove a fact that's critical to your case. I mean, that's my belief if you're able to present your full case to a jury. But where that bullet came from, how it came, how it hit him, all of those things, the trajectory, all of those things I think would be relevant to the prosecution's case.
And that's where we have to leave it, but we appreciate all these opinions. It's getting argued out inside of a court of law with the prosecution and defense wanting this video either in or out. We will continue to monitor that. When we come back from our break, we're going beyond the gavel. A teenager who admitted to carrying out a killing spree is soon going to learn whether he'll be eligible for parole in a few decades or spend the rest of his life behind bars. We're talking about it after this.
Now, back to the Court TV podcast.
Welcome back. We are taking you beyond the gavel, those cases that aren't playing out with the trial. And this one, because a teenager admitted to carrying out a deadly killing spree in North Carolina, and he could now spend the rest of his life behind bars. So before we get into what happened in that court hearing today, a Miller hearing, let's talk about and listen to more on the case.
We begin with breaking news right now in Raleigh, an active shooting situation.
The afternoon of October 13th, 2022, local newscasts tuned in to a mass tragedy unfolding in the Hedingham neighborhood of Raleigh, North Carolina.
We have multiple sources into the WRL newsroom now confirming the word is multiple people dead.
It didn't take long for law enforcement to close in on their suspect, 15-year-old Austin Thompson. One of the deceased victims was identified as his 16-year-old brother, James.
At 4:20 in the afternoon, this defendant went into one of the rooms at his residence, retrieved a .22 caliber rifle, and shot his brother James in the back of the head.
News station WRAL was in the courtroom as a prosecutor described the gruesome attack.
The defendant, it would appear, then took a knife and began to stab his brother. He stabbed him and caused what the medical examiner would describe as 57 sharp force injuries to his brother, most of which in the neck area on the left-hand side of his throat and neck.
Court documents indicate the teen then changed into full camouflage gear and packed a large backpack. It contained items including $700 in cash, dozens of rounds of ammunition, face paint, knives, and toilet paper. He also packed 2 firearms, a shotgun capable of holding 5 shells, and a 9mm handgun with extra loaded magazines. From there, Thompson's rampage continued, leaving 4 more people dead, including Raleigh police officer Gabriel Torres. Police said Torres was sitting in his car, waiting to kiss his daughter goodbye before going to work, when Thompson confronted him and shot him 3 times. Also killed in the shooting spree was Thompson's neighbor, Nicole Connors, and Mary Marshall, whose body was found on a Greenway trail. Farther down that trail, jogger Susan Carnatz was found dead from 3 gunshot wounds. Weeks before he was set to stand trial, Thompson changed his plea to guilty. In addition to first-degree murder, Thompson pleaded guilty to 2 counts of attempted first-degree murder and assault with a deadly weapon for injuring a police officer and another neighbor who survived the massacre. Lynn Gardner told Raleigh station CBS 17 she chose to forgive Thompson.
I forgave Austin because I wanted to protect my heart. When I say I love Austin, even though he did a horrendous thing to me.
Austin Thompson was in court today for day 1 of a Miller hearing. Now, this is a special sentencing proceeding required by the United States Supreme Court ruling and adhered to by North Carolina law for juveniles who are convicted of first-degree murder and face the potential of life imprisonment without parole. This is a hearing that's going to determine whether a juvenile defendant can receive life in prison with or without parole. So that's what we're expecting at the end of this 2-week hearing over the deaths of these 5 victims. Now, during today's proceedings, the widow of Officer Gabriel Torres, who was killed by Thompson while he was off duty, she testified about the moment she found out her husband died. Take a listen.
Before anyone could actually confirm that my husband died, one of the WRAL notifications came up on my phone, and that's when I learned that my husband didn't make it. Our life has been changed forever. And my daughter didn't deserve any of it. My husband didn't deserve any of it. And I know I didn't deserve any of it.
Now, again, because of his age, Thompson can't face the death penalty, and that Miller hearing is expected again to last for 2 weeks. So let's bring back in our power panel and get their reaction to this case. We have Lisa Bonner, Michael Sterling, and Matthew Barhoma. And Matthew, I'm going to start out there with you. Your opinion on this case, such emotional testimony in front of a judge, not a jury, because this is a Miller hearing and the outcome is going to be life with or without parole.
You know, it's tough. It's really tough because he was so young at the time. It begs the question, what was wrong, right? I think that in a sentencing hearing, you got to hear from an expert, a forensic psychiatrist that really sheds light on what was going on. I think he also inflicted wounds to himself, right? And so, you know, it's really difficult to process a case like this. It's difficult for the victims to grieve it. And I think it's gonna leave everyone a little bit empty, even at the end of it, because no matter what the sentence is, there was some serious injury. Okay, there was death, and there's no coming back from that. So it's tough, and I empathize with this process.
Lisa, it's as if our criminal justice system really grapples with a case like this because they want to balance his age and the fact that he is a minor and giving him something like life without parole, which has no end to it, but also faced with a mass shooting. We see this with school shootings, and the Oxford school shooter, he had to go through a similar Miller hearing. Your reaction to what we've seen in this case so far and what you think we're going to see over the next 2 weeks?
I believe that we're going to hear more of the victim impact statements. We do need to hear from a forensic psychologist. I know that he also had mental health records that are sealed because of his age. And it's very important that we get some idea of his mental state. He clearly, in my opinion, had the mens rea in order to form the premeditation because of all of the evidence that was set forth, how he went and he changed his clothes, he took $700 in cash, just all of the evidence that leads to understanding the severity of what he had done and what he needed to do. So we're going to have to really dig into that. I am never a proponent of giving a young person life without the possibility of parole, but in this instance, I would tend to lean towards that, just from not from my legal opinion, but just from where I sit as a person looking at this evidence. It's horrific either way it unfolds, and it's just tragic. But we do need to get into his mental state to really figure out what was going on, to see if there were any mitigating circumstances, and really try and get the best outcome that we can, all things considered, the most reasonable outcome, I should say.
Sure.
Yeah.
Michael Sterling, your reaction to this? I'm even thinking back to when I got the chance as an investigative reporter in Florida to interview the mother of the defendant in the Florida versus Graham U.S. Supreme Court case, where if a juvenile committed something that was a non-homicide, they could no longer get life in prison. So it seems like we're always dealing with it, but we see there are teens, young people who get life without parole.
Yeah, this is one of those cases that sort of sit at the crossroads of justice and youth, right? So you have somebody who's done a permanent harm, a very permanent harm, where people have lost their lives, killed his brother, took out other people's family members and loved ones. The harm is, most certainly permanent. But the law, in so many respects, treats adolescents differently, right? We have laws that say if you're a certain age, you can't engage in a relationship with somebody older than you, right? We respect that. You can't join the military. You can't buy cigarettes or alcohol. You can't, there's certain things that our laws consistently recognize that you don't have the mental capacity to do because you haven't reached an age of maturity. And then you have this 15-year-old who does, this permanent harm. So, this is just one of those situations where, yeah, I don't feel, I would not want to be in the judicial seat making that decision because, you're trying to balance this justice and youth issue, right? And it doesn't matter what the outcome is, right? Someone's going to end up disappointed. Someone's going to think the sentence wasn't harsh enough, and someone's going to think that you might have been too lenient, Your Honor. So this is just one of those very difficult decisions where we're trying to balance, the crossroads of justice and youth.
Yeah, Matthew, final thoughts on this one, because you mentioned the forensic psychologist. This defendant, because of a self-inflicted gunshot wound to his brain, the reports are that he doesn't remember anything about the incident and may not even have a lot of memory from before. How does a psychologist work with that?
Well, the psychologist goes through an array of things, not just from the defendant's medical records, but also his family. And I think that can be very telling. I think a forensic psychiatrist in this case is going to be monumental. I think it's the biggest play that the defense has at sentencing if he has an opportunity at getting a parole sentence.
All right, Matthew, Michael, and Lisa, thank you for your thoughts on this one. I like how you said it, Michael. This is the intersection of justice and youth. It's pivotal to the criminal justice system when we see cases like this, and we're going to keep following it. It's going to be a 2-week case, or 2-week trial, 2-week sentencing hearing there in North Carolina. When we come back from our break, though, hot takes on the cold facts. Our panel is going to be giving us their opinions on today's biggest headlines. While one conviction in California gets overturned, another in Florida, they're hoping to get a conviction tossed. We're breaking down the biggest legal headlines.
This is the Court TV Podcast.
Welcome back. Let's get right to the hot takes on the cold hard facts, and let's look at our first headline. This one out of California, an appeals court overturning a sex abuse conviction for former UCLA gynecologist Dr. James Heaps. Now, this ruling said that he didn't get a fair trial and ordered that the case has to be retried. He pleaded not guilty to 21 felony counts in the sexual assaults of women between the years of 2009 and 2018, but a jury found him guilty of 3 counts of sexual battery by fraud and 2 counts of sexual penetration involving 2 patients. Now, during the original trial, here's the issue. The jury foreman raised concerns that one of the jurors on the panel didn't understand English well enough to participate in the deliberations, but that note was never shared with Heaps' defense team. Prosecutors say they plan to retry him. He was sentenced to 11 years in prison back in 2023. Let's bring in our guest panel, Lisa Bonner, Michael Sterling, and Matthew Barhoma. You get 25 seconds to state your case on these. Lisa, let me start with you. What's your take on this overturned conviction?
Where there's smoke, there's fire. And this man has paid out $700 million in settlements already. And the fact that the lawyers did not realize that this man did not possess a functional knowledge of English is not going to overturn, in my opinion, this case. So they're going to get the same.
You think that?
Yeah, I think they're going to retry it. They're going to retry it. They're going to get the same thing. Yeah.
Michael Sterling, what's your take? Because we've seen these technicalities, the Susan Embercate in Georgia, where one of her jurors had a felony conviction that no one knew about, and it got overturned years later.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, the last time I was on your show, we had a sort of heated discussion about how the process has to be fair for everyone, and how prosecutors and judges, if they don't do their job properly, can have convictions overturned. Rightfully won convictions can be overturned. So, I want the audience to know this isn't about necessarily guilt or innocence. It's about making sure you constitutionally protect someone's right to a fair trial. And if someone can't speak English, can't understand English, then they can't participate in the process, and you've denied somebody a fair trial.
Foreperson brought it up. Matthew Barhoma, your take on this one?
It's frustrating. It's really frustrating because this whole thing could have been totally avoided had there just been a sidebar with the attorneys. Hey, I received this note. And the attorneys then could take it up and maybe declare a mistrial. I agree with Lisa. I think that where there's smoke, there's fire. They're probably going to prosecute him again, and he's going to end up right back here. But due process is due process, and I'm glad that they overturned this conviction.
No, moving to our next story where someone else wants their conviction overturned. Charlie Adelson's attorneys are fighting for a new trial, pointing to the jury being biased. He was convicted in 2023 of murder and conspiracy in the death of his former brother-in-law, Dan Markell. His mom, Donna, was also convicted in the killing last year. Adelson's lawyer said that the judge should have moved this trial because of the heavy media coverage and made it impossible to seat an impartial jury. But the state argues that Adelson accepted the jury without objection and that it's now too late to raise that issue on appeal. The judges are expected to respond and rule on this in the coming months. Michael Sterling, Charlie Adelson, he wants a new trial. I remember this. The jury, he said they were wearing FSU clothing during the trial and that they were clearly against him.
We know appellate courts don't reward silence. That's the one thing they do not do. If you accept a jury without an objection, then you probably have waived the claim to make that your jury was biased or had these biases against you. So one thing we know for sure is that when you're a trial lawyer and you're making these quick determinations in court about what to do, you're usually going to err on the side of over-objecting because you don't want to waive an issue. And if you don't bring it up, appellate courts are not going to respect silence.
Matthew Barhoma, I recall in this case, they brought in jury consultants from a different state to help them pick this jury. What's your take on this one?
Anytime that an Adelson is on trial, I'm watching, okay? But with that being said, what I'll tell you is I just don't see it. I think it's a very high appellate bar for Mr. Adelson here. And I think for him to try and get this through this way is not going to happen because when I read it, I thought that it was waived. So I think the outcome is going to be no retrial for you.
Lisa, final take on this one.
I'm going to give you much of your time back. I agree with this. They're doing everything that they should be doing. They are throwing everything but the kitchen sink at them. I agree, once you have accepted that jury, it's game over. And I don't think it's going to change much. I think the appellate court is going to just uphold the sentence.
Kick it back down.
Yeah.
We will see and be following it. Our last story is out of Los Angeles. The prosecution says that the investigation into actor Kiefer Sutherland is still ongoing, but it's on hold, and no charges have been filed at this point. He was supposed to appear in court yesterday, but the case was sent back to police for more investigation before prosecutors decide what to do. They are reviewing an incident involving a rideshare driver who claims that Sutherland punched him, tried to choke him, and though police say that there were no injuries and there was nothing that required medical treatment, Sutherland was arrested and taken into custody. That happened last month. He posted a $50,000 bond and has not publicly commented on the allegations. Matthew, let me start with you. What's your take on no charges formally? Are we going to see this case actually go forward?
You could. What I'll tell you is I practice law in this jurisdiction. Okay, I'm very familiar with this DA's office. And just because they didn't bring charges today doesn't mean they're not bringing charges later. They could. And they often do, by the way. Now, with that being said, I represent defendants in exactly this kind of scenario. And usually with defense attorneys, especially for a high-profile client, is they are amping up the pressure. They are speaking to the prosecution, and they're going to defend this case. So the DA needs to get it right if they want to bring claims.
Matthew, you got to jump in and let Lisa give her take. What do you think about the prosecution saying, okay, we're kicking this back to police right now? Lisa, your take.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I think that this is, they need to get more information. There was no visible injuries. He did not go to the hospital. The Uber driver did not go to the hospital. So they need to dig into this a lot more before we can really determine. But if there is enough, they will certainly bring it.
All right, Michael Sterling, final take.
I think it's a good thing that the DA's office is reviewing the case, looking at all the evidence and trying to let the facts catch up to the noise, because you want to make sure you get it right. If you're going to indict someone and you want to be able to prove they're guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, do your due diligence, have due process, let the evidence catch up to the noise.
We do like it when they are judicious with everything, but did they rush to judgment in arresting him and getting a mugshot out there? Who knows? Michael Sterling, Matthew Barhoma, and Lisa Bonner, we always appreciate your legal analysis and opinions on Court of Opinion. So thank you so much for being with us this hour. When we come back, thank you for connecting with us this hour. I'm Jenaé for Court of Opinion, reminding you that we all have opinions. They should be rooted in the facts. We should strive always to respect the other's opinion, even when we don't agree with it.
This podcast is a production of Court TV. Go to CourtTV.com for more content, trials on demand, and to find out how to watch Court TV in your area.